Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Environment and Energy. At the recent Global Climate Summit in Marrakesh, the United States climate envoy said that because of rapid melting in Antarctica, current levels of global warming could see 1.5 metres of sea level rise by 2050. In other words, even if the world stopped all pollution tomorrow, by the time a child born today reaches her 30s, she'd live in a world where the sea is 1.5 metres higher than now. This isn't a Green group or climate activist saying this, it's the US government. Minister, given our coastal capital cities, what would be the impacts on Australians' homes, businesses and infrastructure if sea levels rise by 1.5 metres?
The Minister for the Environment and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Melbourne for his question, and I can inform him that this government is taking the challenge of climate change very seriously. And in fact, the Foreign Minister and I recently went to Morocco, and we were representing Australia after having ratified the Paris Agreement and our commitment to a 26 to 28% reduction by 2030 on 2005 levels, and on a per capita basis that is one of the highest in the G20. And Australia was praised for the work it's doing in carbon capture and storage, praised for the work it's doing in innovation, praised for the partnership it's struck with countries like Indonesia to work on deforestation. Unlike those opposite and unlike your party, I say to the member for Melbourne, we are being responsible in our targets. We have one eye on energy security, another on energy affordability, while we're also transitioning to a lower emissions future. Now, it's okay for the member for Melbourne to sip on his latte in the street of Brunswick, to put his sandals up on the seat, and to say—
Minister will resume his seat. Minister, just resume his seat. Members on my left and right will cease interjecting. Members will cease interjecting. The member for Chifley, the member for Whitlam, the member for Melbourne on a point of order.
Point of order on relevance, Speaker. It wasn't a partisan question about policies, and if the minister can't tell us about climate impacts on infrastructure—
The minister has the call.
Yeah. Mr Speaker, I was informing the House about how successful we are, not only having met our first Kyoto target and beaten it by 128 million tonnes, how we're on track to beat our 2020 target, but also how we have ambitious 2030 targets. But what I was also pointing out, Mr Speaker, was that it's okay for the member for Melbourne to put his sandals up on the seat, sip his soy latte and sit in the streets of Brunswick and say that it's the end of coal, because he put out a press release saying it was the end of coal to celebrate the loss of jobs in the Latrobe Valley for the people of Hazelwood. Shame on him! Shame on him! When he was joining with the Labor Party when they were last in government to pay $5.5 billion to those brown coal power stations to keep their doors open. Now, Mr Speaker, the member for Melbourne doesn't understand that you need a smooth transition, and one which encourages the resources sector and understands that coal is an important part of the energy mix. But if you want to hear a sum-up about the Greens, you only have to listen to the former Prime Minister Paul Keating, who said when he launched the member for Grainler's election campaign, "I'll tell you about the Greens. They are a bunch of opportunistic trots hiding behind a gum tree, trying to pretend they are the Labor Party." Mr Speaker, they don't have to pretend they're the Labor Party, because the Labor Party has now joined them.